NewGenGamers.com.
Yeah, I really don't imagine that it would have been the hugest hit at slumber parties. And of course, it was. I've never been to a slumber party per se, but
I have.
it had slumber party fare such as, what do you like, what things are you into, whatever.
I'm sure it was gossip about boys and jewelry.
Yeah, and you could have up to 4 players, and they'd each enter in their answers on the same controller. But it just totally misleading. Did not look like something made for a sleepover at all. It looked like a total.
Looked like a guy. It looked like a boy toy.
Guy
really
toy
did.
video game system thingy, not a DVD play along sleepover game for girls.
Well, we do appreciate the misdirection, Coleco.
You got us.
You got us, and we had a mighty laugh over it, and we can't wait to get our hands on that slumber party DVD.
We need that DVD. If anyone has that DVD, we want to play this game because
we will put video on the internet of us playing it.
We need to share experiences and know which boy each of us likes.
And make sure you stay away from that terrible DVD game. I'm sure it's.
We'll take it off your hands.
We will. We'll help you out. We know it's haunting you. It's in the closet somewhere.
We know you played it that one time and then
you just shook your head in disgust.
Or your mom accidentally got it thinking it was something much cooler.
Yeah. Or she walked in the room while you were playing it. You creepy bastard.
There's at least 2 of them out there.
You know who you are. We wag our fingers at you.
So,
yeah, I mean, this is a good look at a Pac-Man clone, and Ray seems to be enjoying it. And a mouse turns into a dog for whatever reason, but we know the natural enemy of a mouse is a cat, and the natural enemy of a cat is a dog, and the natural enemy of a dog is a shotgun. So, let's move on to our next game. And here we're seeing one of Universal's titles released for the ColecoVision. As we said, Coleco went after a lot of the big name arcade people, Konami, Nintendo, Sega, names that are still today around. And Mr. Do is a game that I'm sure many people who are into classic gaming have tried at one point. It's kind of like Dig Dug and Pac-Man put together in an interesting way.
Yeah, it's one of those hidden gem arcade classics.
And a very fun game and a very tight game. An interesting title that I've enjoyed playing, and Ray's going to enjoy playing right now. And we're going to show it off to you as we kind of wind down on our look at the ColecoVision. We've talked a lot over this time about the different things that happened, but once again, like we said, the ColecoVision was short-lived. It doesn't have that same fanfare, but it does have a little bit. See, in '96, we see a Tetris clone that is called Kevtris that is created for the hardware. We see a little bit of a resurgence in interest in this, and by '97 we get the Personal Arcade Volume 1 for the Microsoft Windows, which is kind of like a compilation piece, just a little bit of something, and eventually a sequel to that, ColecoVision Hits Volume 1 was released in '98. And now, as I said before, the River West board owns the rights to the Coleco brand, and they release things here and there. But as we look at Mr. Do, we have to also, as I said, kind of remember that the Intellivision and Atari are a completely different beast in the sense that they have a longevity to them. People are still interested in Atari, that household name during the 80s. It has a lot of a fanfare affiliated with it, such as the T-shirts that are sold now, and even the brand name being owned. They still make games. It's not the same company, but
yeah, unfortunately, Coleco it was the best console out at the time, but it was forgotten.
And and that comes down
by
to
history.
It doesn't have a lot of original games for it. These are all arcade ports. We've mentioned that time and time again, but that's what we've seen. It was releasing the best of the arcade ports, but original titles also need to be there for that longevity, for that novelty, to be affiliated with a game system. And sadly, the ColecoVision did not have that.
Yeah, one thing that it does have that makes it stand out as a collector's piece, though, if anyone wants to go back and get any of these games, is they had a lot of original arcade games, and like we said, they went out and they scoured for these gems, things like Mr. Do that they pushed very hard, that I believe it was on the Atari 2600. we'll check on that. But this type of game was what they pushed hard, and they tried to grab these titles up. Someone like Sega, who was renowned in the arcades but hadn't been brought home yet, they were very savvy to go after these companies, and they picked the right ones to go after.
Absolutely.
As far as if you want to own the original hardware and the original games, there's a great selection to choose from. You're just not going to be able to own as many of the compilation packs and things that we have seen with the others, the plug and plays that we've spoke about, and some of the other stuff that the other systems have come out with over the years.
And there are, like Ron said, there's not so many, but there are a couple Coleco plug and plays out there that you can come upon. But once again, with so many things being arcade ports, it's hard to get the licensings to that. So it's more what I've come upon is the Coleco sports handheld titles or plug and play titles. So in the end, it's a great system. It did what it needed to do at the time, but it had such a short lifespan. And those who remember it fondly. Those who had it, it's big.
Yeah, the Coleco players that had them at the time loved their machines, especially if they had that 2600 module and some of these great arcade games, some of their good original games that they did have. There was a lot to like if you owned one. You certainly wouldn't be disappointed with the library.
No, not at all. Especially if you got sick of putting all those quarters into the game, or you just couldn't make it to the arcade, or as we saw, the arcade scene became a shady place. So staying at home, safe in your house, away from all the drugs and violence of American life, playing your Mr. Do. What else did you do than play Mr. Do in the safety of your home?
Absolutely.
That's the way I like to think of it. And I do like this game. Look, as you notice, Ray, playing this, there's a lot to like about Mr. Do.
Yeah, it's really fun. Plays very fluidly, and again on this joystick, with the range of motion you have, it moves very fluidly, except when you get stuck in a rock that's between two squares, like just happened.
Hey, when you're cornered, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
It happens.
But we look fondly back on this system. Unlike the Atari 5200, that was a stinker. The Atari 2600 is so storied, so I mean that's, no one can hardly forget that. The Intellivision was a great system. This really was the first major console war with interchangeable cartridges, and that's why we number it Console War 1, because of the interchangeable cartridges. And this was really the apex and pinnacle going into the crash that would basically clear the arena and pave the way for the next generation of systems, when we'd see Japan's companies make a huge rise in the home industry and see these old names fade out.
And it's interesting to say that Coleco was a one-shot wonder. Yeah, it was. The hardware was remade and reused, but not by the company itself, by other people who came along.
Yeah.
This is the one and only. We had the add-ons, but mostly what you see is what you get, and that's interesting. Whereas there were 3 different ones in the generation of the Atari and the Intellivision, that was more of a straight shot too. But there were different brands that came out of that.
The crash at that point in the early 80s, there was a lot of companies that came along. RCA tried stuff. There was the Vectrix. There was so much stuff in Japan. Magnavox. There was a lot of companies involved, and the crash really just leveled the playing field, and most of them either went bankrupt or dropped out of video games and saw them as a fad that were no longer viable.
Playing on ColecoVision in 1984. War Games, the blockbuster movie, becomes more than just a game on ColecoVision. Tarzan, the original swinger, is still the king of the jungle on ColecoVision. Frontline, the ultimate invasion on a constantly changing battlefield on ColecoVision. Congo Bongo, the hilarious jungle adventure on ColecoVision. Star Trek, fight aliens at the speed of light on ColecoVision. The best game in town keeps getting better.
New Gen Gamers.com.